Welcome to Subject to Change, a sustainability podcast. We're here with Baani Singh to talk about green design.
I don't believe we have ever met in person.
Really?
So it's nice to
Awesome.
officially meet you because I hear all the time from various areas like what a rock star you are.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you see the little microphone in the lower right, click on that to learn more. We're so glad you're here.
What's this awesome space you're in?
So this is my house.
No. Really?
Yes. We just moved in. We actually moved in while it was still a little bit unfinished towards the end of last year. And I think I spoke to Jodi some time ago that I wanted to practice what I preach and what I design. And I would like to build a house that, at least takes care of some of the things that we design. And we tell our clients, let's try to build net zero carbon or net zero energy. Or, let's build, reduce toxin or as much as possible, toxin-free interiors, use healthy materials. So all of that had been in my mind for so many years. And I started designing my house, I would say, about 5.5 years ago. And it has taken about 3 years plus to be able to move into the house, almost 3.5 years to be able to move into the house. Just because even though the design industry is getting to that level and there is a general understanding of a lot of the things, even though if there's not a in-depth knowledge, but there's a general understanding.
Contractors are not there yet.
Construction industry, at least on the residential side, is not there.
So I am finding the same thing.
Yep.
I've gone into this process. I've been trying to design something that fits my budget, which is a whole other discussion that touches on all of the same things that you're trying to do. And I've been very frustrated because a custom home builder won't touch me with a 10-foot pole because I'm not building something that's at least $500,000. And I can't even find an out there, I mean progressive prefab modular or home builder in the area. You can find a tiny home builder who's pretty progressive. I'm just outside the area of one prefab group, and I want to give props to the Catskill modular people because they seem to be the most progressive that I can find, but they don't deliver to my area.
They don't understand the complexities of every single material that has to go, especially inside. We were very, very careful. And it just became very difficult for some of these contractors to understand that.
Learning a lot.
I have personally in this journey learned a lot too.
Good.
Because I realized there's so much that I don't know about materials. There's so much that I understood I would say on a surface, but I didn't really understand in depth of the impact of some of those things. And, while the wheels were in motion and contracts signed or materials purchased, I realized that was not the right material to use.
There will always be trade-offs in goals.
We definitely have a very huge carbon footprint on this house. Right. Overall, we tried to make the most of what we could. In terms of other aspects of sustainability, for sure. If I were to design again, which I will never do my own house, but somebody else's house, or hopefully I'll do a tiny home for my daughter, that's what she wants. We did not look a lot into carbon impact, embodied carbon as such, because a lot of the products which were healthy did not come from local areas. I found most of the certified Green Guard cabinetry at Home Depot.
That's good to know. And just as a follow-up, wow, embodied carbon. I mean, it's really only in the last 5 years that people are starting to talk about embodied carbon. So the fact that that's one of the things about sustainability, right? If you wait to get it 100% correct, you're never going to make the changes that help us get better. You just have to dive in.
Minority and women-owned business enterprises.
I'm always curious if you think as a minority business owner, if you think the system is actually working to support MWBE and diversity across the industry,
Yes, tell me
do
what
you
you
think it's actually supporting it?
I would say absolutely.
Really?
Good.
For at least in my case, it helped a lot. I was, I've always worked in different firms and different architectural firms over the years. I'm originally from India. I'm born and brought up in India. We are minority even in India. I'm a Sikh by religion, and we are a minority even in India. And when I moved to Canada, at that period of time, I realized it was difficult to get jobs and as a minority. Now they've come so far that there are 7 Sikh people in the parliament. So it's a totally different, different era, I would say.
Wow, that's great.
While working in US, I realized that, on the surface, it looks like there is no discrimination. But when you are working on projects and when you are dealing with people with personality clashes, then you realize there is so much more going on in people's mind and supervisors' mind and human resources people's mind that you don't realize. And I felt like I was a little naive to this, and I thought, as long as I work hard, I give my 100% and more, and as long as I know that I can make things better, nothing's going to happen. But I was kind of naive to the fact that it doesn't happen that way. So when I opened my own practice, one of my mentors from my previous firm suggested that I take women minority certification and see how that goes. And I did. And my first couple of projects, the foot in the door, came from that. And it has absolutely helped me for sure. No doubt about it.
That's great.
Too much paperwork.
I always wonder about the process of measuring quite often, and this is my personal bias, the process of measuring sometimes becomes the focus, and then the information isn't really brought back into the system, or there's nothing changed in the system to reach more people. It's just purely demographics listed on a yearly basis. And it's reassuring to know that that is how you got a foot in the door. I'm wondering if, as a follow-up to the question, what you wish would change, if anything. It might be that you're perfectly content with the system, but is there something that could be done better? And
I
then
have one
we'll
that
send
I
this
want
to the right
say.
people.
So I'm going to let Baani go first, and then I'm going to tell you my answer to that question.
Okay.
I think the system works well. The only thing I feel, the amount of paperwork and that you need to go through the process, not to just get certified, but to do this work and file audits. And I know it is to protect people too at the same time, just gets too much for a small firm owner.
Are you on your own, or is it just you, or do you have employees too? Do you have an office manager?
I do have employees, but I don't have an office manager.
So you do all of that, right?
Yeah.
Same, but I do all my own production work, and it is, firms get mad at me because I'm like, that's literally the last thing on my priority list. Would you rather your project deliverable or me fill out this audit? Which admittedly doesn't take that long, but it's just like, it breaks down, right? You gotta shift focus. So to go back to Jodi's question, I think that the MWBE process works very well on the design side of projects.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's failing on the construction side of projects.
Yeah, in what way?
Okay, so we have, what I will say is the shortage of, it's fair to say that there's a shortage of skilled workers in general, correct?
Yes.
Now take a very small demographic of people. Anyone who is, I'm going to say, very good at their craft, that's an MWBE on the construction side, is book solid. They don't have to take on a new project for over a year.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
maybe you can find anybody else. Maybe.
Yeah. I term that in it on the consultant side as loving consultants to death. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Baani, but if you're popular and you can fill in the paperwork and you do the job well, you're going to get all the work you want until the point that you're actually driven out of business from being overextended. and that to me is a flag that says the system needs a little more tuning, because there should be a way to, the whole point of the system is to diversify the entire industry. But if we're loving some firms to death or loving some contractors to death, we're actually monopolizing the system based on those people that are proven. So how do we safely diversify the system?
Leadership in energy and environmental design.
Did not go through LEED. Initially, I think when I first, Jodi told me about LEED many years ago, probably over 20 years ago. Jodi is the one who introduced me to LEED. At that point, I told Jodi, one day I'm going to build my house. I'm going to build a LEED certified house. But sorry, Jodi, I didn't do LEED.
No. Let's talk about that when you're done with your statement, because there are a couple things there.
But I did Living Building Challenge, net zero energy, and awesome. Then I looked into other areas and EDGE, and I looked into Indoor Air Quality Plus, Water Sense Plus from Department of Energy, looked at NYSERDA. So I looked at a lot of different things, and I was like, I'm not just going for certifications. I want to be able to do those that held me accountable, because I need a path for the things that I want to do.
So see, all right, this is great.
Jodi's got some flitting thoughts.
Boy, there were like three things that flitted through my head as you were talking about that. First was just a statement about three women on this Zoom call talking about what's working with diversity in design and construction. And I think each of us has a role in how that unfolds. And I know just to put a point on it, Lauren's working on understanding how to train younger people to come into the industry, which is something we desperately need. Baani, you're working with other firms to create a resilience in the industry. And that made me think of a recent interview we did with Graham Boyd, where he talks about how companies succeed when they work together and support each other. If they're not doing that and they're being jealous of their content and jealous of their staff and very protective, a few succeed and the rest fail. So you have made yourself more resilient as a business by having that connectivity, which is amazing.
I would also like to add that I super admire the fact that you will actually call someone and say, cool. I'm a little slow at this point. The fact that you can be that honest about it, that to me is really impressive, because for me, I kind of do the opposite. I'm like, nope, things are great. Things are great all the time. Whether they are or they aren't, things are great.
Well, so also when
that is a lesson for me. I feel like I should kind of take a page out of that book.
Things are great. I'm fine.
Things are great is my mentality. I go by the principle. It's called, you probably have never heard the word, it's called Chardi Kala. That means relentless optimist behavior of like relentless value. But
so cool.
So I go by that principle, because that principle I felt has given me the most strength in difficult times. I've gone through a lot of health issues over the years. I have become partially disabled, because of the health issues I've gone through. But that relentless, optimized behavior has kind of taken me through a lot of these issues. But I'm the first to admit when things are not going right. So I feel like, okay, for whatever reason, I'm a little slow these days. And in 2021, I felt that because a lot of the state projects went on hold.
Anger, ego, and greed.
And just a question, having the vulnerability and the honesty to say, I'm a little slow right now. Do you have something that you need help on? What does that do for you as a human being? How does that make you feel as a human being?
In my religion, there's a huge part of 5 vices within you. And it's, the big ones are anger, ego, greed. So there are 5, but so I'm just going to talk about those 3. But ego on one hand is one thing that we all struggle with, I feel. We don't feel like we have it, but we do have a little bit of it. And every time I do that, it kind of, cuts through that a little bit. And I feel, you know what, this was not bad, because if I don't have ego, that will spiritually help me too. So that's how I take it, as with that feeling, thinking, okay, you know what? I shouldn't have any ego. I have to work. I like to be busy. Financially, I'm okay, but I like to be busy because I am one of that person. I know you said Lauren is also, helping young minds in the industry. I have taught for 10 years. I just resigned this last semester. I have taught at the Interior Spatial Design College at Russell Sage. I've taught there for almost 10 years. And
that's amazing.
But at this point, I felt like, you know what? I have been so busy doing all these things, going to school myself, teaching. I consulted for NYSERDA. I had my own business. And now it's time for me to just focus on my own business. And because I like to stay so busy, sometimes it feels like maybe I don't have enough. Maybe I should ask if somebody else needs help. And that's how I take it. It's not always about financially keeping the company afloat. It's also not only keeping myself busy, but also keeping my employees busy, because I rather not let people go, especially during COVID, when everybody was already struggling.
Greater resilience.
Do you think people in the sustainability spectrum, and I've started to use the term full spectrum sustainability, because it's about health and it's about equity and it's about materials and it's about governance, it's about all of these things. Do you think people who I'm going to say are like us and thinking other than conventionally, hopefully someday it'll be conventional, but do you think that we're more willing to lend a hand, to be vulnerable, to reach out and collaborate with other companies?
I do believe that. I don't know why, but I do believe that. I feel like we have become more in touch with all those things just by being in the field too. I love the idea of sustainability resonated very fast with me when in my early years of career, you had talked about it, because for me, that was natural, because that's something my religion talks about. That's something my culture in India talks about.
Vinyl flooring?
At the last firm we were together, they said about vinyl flooring. And to me, I'm thinking, what is vinyl flooring? Yeah. Because back in India, there was no vinyl flooring.
Yeah, it's a mistake. That's what it is.
I know. I'm like, I wish no one knew what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. So I'm like, and I looked at the tile. The first time I held the tile in my hand and I said, this is flooring? I can break it with 2 hands. This is flooring? And I later on understood the health impacts of it, throughout the life cycle of the product. But just to see the durability wise and all the maintenance that goes into the product over its life, look at those things. I'm like, in India, your basic flooring starts at terrazzo. That's your basic flooring. That's where it starts.
Well, that's an interesting question. I just came up with an interesting question. I'm not going to ask it yet. Finish your statement.
And then you look at, okay, am I going to do a better flooring? Maybe I'll do stone, or I'll do this or that. It goes, or porcelain tile, but it starts at very basic level there. So for me, when I started looking at materials here, especially for interiors, because I was doing a lot of interior architectural work, for me, it was like materials here are not built to last. I think that's the
Right.
biggest problem. And that's where I started focusing first.
Mother, father, and teacher.
I keep mentioning religion, but religion kind of pushes
Mm.
me towards it a lot more, because in my scriptures, there is so much importance given to Mother Earth. There is so much importance given to air, as air is taken as your teacher. And you say, yeah, there is a saying, it's called Pavan Guru. So Pavan, the air, is your teacher. Wind or air is your teacher.
Mhm.
Um, and then water is taken as your father, and earth is taken as your mother. So there is such huge importance of some of these elements that you're like, why would I do any harm to those
Mm.
elements that are considered as my relationships?
Does a long history have something to do with it?
I wonder if one of the challenges the United States faces is that we have such a short history as a country. And so we don't have an idea of longevity and lasting. And if India, for example, defaults to perennial materials that can last for millennia because you have that depth of history, and it's probably a false thought, but it's maybe a piece of our
Oh,
problem. We have a lot of problems, but that's a little piece of our problems.
some very interesting thought, because also we see sculptures and we see buildings and we see monuments that have been there for centuries in
Yeah.
India, that we are so used to seeing it. And and that kind of resonates with that for sure. But also, in my, everything sounds good on surface, but more in depth when you look. Why is that terrazzo is your basic material? Because cost of labor is cheap,
Mhm.
and which
Okay,
is
that's
not a
fair.
good thing. Which is not
Yeah,
a good
that's a
thing.
great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
Making change.
Do you remember when we were at, and I'm going to say the name of the firm, it's now CS Arch, but it was Collins and Scovel Architects when Baani and I were both there. Do you remember Suni Oñanta? And it was a great interior design, and the flooring, they wanted VCT because they had VCT throughout the campus, and we said no, we should go with linoleum because of all the reasons why it's better than VCT. And they were very suspicious, so we handed them linoleum and we handed them VCT, and we said, test these against the chemicals that you'll be using in your science building, talk about them with your facilities managers, and let us know what you think. And after they compared the two products and got our data on them as well, they were able to say, you know what? Linoleum reacts to some of the chemicals we use poorly. VCT reacts to other chemicals we use poorly, but overall they're about the same. And if the maintenance is less for the linoleum, let's do that. And it wasn't about sustainability at all, right? They were just talking about maintenance.
Yes.
But I was like, yes, that's a win. We're going to do that. That's awesome. And it was the comparison, holding the material in your hand.
No apology needed.
So the other thing I was going to say about LEED earlier is you apologized to me for not using LEED. And I was, on a national chapter steering committee for the USGBC. I've tried to get involved with their working groups. They've never accepted me, which drives me crazy. Regardless, I am a big believer in LEED as a mover of the industry. However, I think, and we've had these conversations, Baani, I think that most people use the LEED rating system absolutely incorrectly. And what it sounds like you did for your house is you defined what was important to you and then found the tools that would help you get to those things that were important to you. So you set the goals for the project, and you did it with your whole mindset there and understanding, what you want for your family down the road. It's not just the goals for today. And then it turns out LEED wasn't probably comprehensive enough or focused enough on materials for you, whatever the case may be. And you used what made sense. And I think we should do that for every project. But the key to that is having the conversation with the project team about what the goals for the project should be. And I would tell you that even at very, very good firms, very smart firms, very capable firms, they often don't have that conversation at all unless the client says, we want to go lead. And then they have conversations about how the checklist can inform the project instead of your mission is to create students that will be good, good citizens of our communities, good civic citizens. Okay, well, let's look at that mission and look at this project, look at how you educate, and then figure out what this project has to do to support your mission. And probably if you're talking about being good civic involved people in the world, you should build a building that teaches them about how materials and purchasing choices affect their lives and affect the waste system. And in order to do that, maybe we need to pick materials that show them the better way to do it.
Ground the goals.
And I'm glad you said that. A lot of times we are brought into the project after the fact because for whatever reason, either due to a state agency mandate or whatever reason, it is supposed to be a LEED Silver project. But even with that, we have had success in, I'd say about 3 projects so far that didn't go LEED, but they went another route because that made more sense to us. And that's what we helped them make more sense of. So
wonderful.
One project was with you, if you remember. I went there to just do a charrette for LEED. I'm supposed to do a charrette for LEED. I'm like, this.
That's what the project manager told you.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't do LEED charrettes. I do sustainability charrettes. So like, okay, whatever you call it, but the project is going for LEED. It's a DASNY project and it's going for LEED, and that's the decision. I said, okay. So we went there, and I'll just name the project. It was SUNY Poly Utica's Hilltop Residence. And when I was sitting there talking to everybody, and I, before even going there, I just looked up research of what the client does, what do they focus on, what do they like, what is the campus has been doing, things like that. And when I went there, I started asking more questions, and they have a huge focus on reducing carbon emissions. And this is talking, a few years back. I would say maybe 3-4 years ago or so.
Might be even 5, but yeah.
And they were like, oh, so is there something that we can do that would focus on reducing carbon emissions then? I said, why not? You tell me what your goals are. This is my exercise today. I spent a little bit more time than I would have on your regular charrettes, for sure. But the important thing was we came down with a list of goals. Then we talked to you, talked to other people at DASNY, and we made a decision that in addition to doing the zero carbon certification, we are also going to put in their program for the contractor to still do healthy materials and avoid these 5 chemicals that we put on our list. Do still something as a baseline from LEED for water, still reduce water use, and construction waste. Those were the 3 things we added in addition to carbon. And that project went for the Living Building Challenge. Net Zero Carbon was the first SUNY project to go for that. And now there are many more. And recently on a project, which was again, it was a SUNY Construction Fund project, supposed to go for LEED. And they are actually going for 2 separate certifications because zero carbon is very important to them. So they are going to do that. But overall sustainability is also very important to them. So they're looking at Living Building Challenge Core because they want to also focus on beauty, equity, happiness, those aspects, in addition to your regular, site, water, energy, materials. They want to also focus on that. So, and I probably had 3 separate charrettes with them to come to that decision. It took us forever. It took us almost, we didn't have a decision till we are in DD. Usually that decision is made right around before schematic or pre-schematic. But it's okay if it took longer, but they're on the right path from now onward. It's not late. And so,
It's so yeah, it's so easy to hand someone a checklist and say, what do you think we can do? But it's so incredibly limiting, and it has no relation to what they want to accomplish with their project. So thank you for grounding those discussions. That's very real.
The envelope, the walls, roof, and floor.
My house is ICF, insulated concrete forms.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would have not used concrete if I was to look at carbon. All our concrete obviously is local, so because it's pretty much mixed outside too. We also eliminated a lot of steel by using Helix, which is a steel fiber that we did not need any horizontal reinforcement because of that. And it was a recycled Helix, so it wasn't pure, it's steel, but it's recycled steel that we ended up using. And we tried to have more of the fly ash content in the concrete. So my whole house till the gable ends of the second floor is all concrete. And then we did timber above that for roofing.
That's great.
And so that was the envelope approach. But we also, because insulated concrete form is also foam insulation, so that was the other concern, is if you're going to do that, how do we look into that aspect of it? So we actually ended up finding Green Guard certified foam for the insulated concrete form. That's what we ended up using. And I also use spray foam on the roof, which is another thing that I hate to specify in the long run, but we ended up finding Green Guard certified spray foam.
That's great. The propellant, the agents in foam products in New York State, they've eliminated the most egregious blowing agents, and that relates to rigid foam insulations in board form, and it also relates to spray foams, which is, so that's wonderful. So now we don't have to work as hard on at least the embodied carbon of the blowing agents, which used to be like 1,400 times that of CO2. So the blowing agents are better, but it's so great that you looked at the toxic burden for those. That's wonderful.
People matter. Think of the installers.
Yeah, because people were spraying the spray foam. People were working with the ICF forms, and I kept that as a very high priority. On days like today, 100-degree days, there was no work. I told people, you're not working in this heat. I don't want anybody. So that, again, working with people was very important instead of working. But I still struggled a lot with contractors, not understanding that why we were doing that and why it was important to us. And they didn't really understand that it was for their own health as well as the project, not just that. So, but I'm sure that they will eventually understand that part as well.
Every step leads to another step.
Every conversation you have is a step in creating that understanding. So thank you for having those conversations. And when can we get a tour?
Yeah.
We can do a tour anytime. I've done, actually, during construction, we did a tour with Sage College. We did a tour with another college, I can't remember. We did a tour with AIA. We did a tour with the USGBC.
There's a little bit of yikes with this hero.
I hate to do this. We
need to wrap up, right?
Yeah, we got to wrap. I'm sorry.
So the first
I don't want it to stop, but there can be a part 2 with a tour.
So the first question we ask everyone is, who's your hero? Who inspires you? Is there someone you can share with us that other people who watch these episodes can also learn from?
To beginning of my career for sustainability, I would say Jodi inspired me. I'm going to be honest. She put me on the path for sure.
She puts us all on the path.
I'm going to cry. I'm so tired from hiking yesterday. You say anything nice to me, I'm going to turn into a puddle.
No, definitely. Beginning of my career, I was lost to find my niche, my one thing that I wanted to do in architecture. Because when I came here, I was a little lost. Because I came from India, where architecture is very, very different. extremely different than here. It's built to last, but also the design process and understanding is very much different than here. It's not about fast, easy, cheap. It's about a lot more. And you kind of put me on the right path, Jodi, because that became my passion for both my career and my personal life. I started reading more about it and relating it to my religion more from that aspect. The other person that I really look up to is, and I'm forgetting, Amanda Sturgeon from
Oh, yeah.
Building. I really look up to her quite a bit. She's awesome. I've been following a lot with other people from Green Chemistry and sixclasses.org. Those have become my new heroes. I've been learning a lot from them.
Good.
And, but to put me on the right path, I think, Jodi, I would definitely give you the credit for that, for sustainability at least. But architecturally, there's a lot more people that put me on the right path. Rich LaRose is the one who actually was my first mentor. He's the one who inspired me to look into women minority certification and to start on that path. And that actually helped me look into that when I now try to team up with people or even to build my own house and on my projects both ways is because he helped me look at that. And now I look at that even more from even Just Organization. We're actually going through our certification for Just Organization.
And what's Baani's big focus?
If you could collectively make everyone in the world take a pause from whatever it is that they're doing in this moment and have them focus on one initiative, what one initiative would you like everyone to focus on?
It's a very tough question because to narrow it down to one, I think everybody should take a pause and look into their own awareness and practice of sustainability. And when I say sustainability, it could be, if we want to only talk about one part of sustainability, I would say health. Because for me, it also started because my daughter had a lot of skin allergies when she was born. For first 5 to, I would say, almost 10 years of her life, she struggled a lot with skin issues. And I couldn't figure out like what's bothering her. And eventually started figuring out it was things in our food. Rice has arsenic. My husband just read it to me the other day. He said, rice has arsenic? And I'm like, yes. It was things in the products that we were using. And it was things in the products that we all have been using forever just for either products that we're using to cook with or products that we're using to use on ourselves. Either of those. Vitamins and things we are eating, everything. We started looking at those things from that perspective. My background, my entire family everybody's a pharmacist. And chemicals started interesting me much more now that I understand that, okay, I have that background, that everybody in my family, my dad, my sister, all my cousins, my uncles, everybody's a pharmacist. And I was the odd one out, is that I'm going to be an architect. And everybody was like, what? I said, yes, that's what I want to do, because my grandfather was a civil engineer. And I was like, that's what I want to do. But now I'm coming almost full circle into the chemical pieces and looking at history and looking at those things. People need to take a pause and actually look at what they're consuming and what they're using and how it is impacting their health and the health of others. I think it's very important to look at.
That's wonderful.
Well, if you haven't checked them out already, check out one of our previous guests, Black Kettle Soap from Troy, correct? And
they're in Troy now. Yep.
Yep. And if you're interested, my mom actually has some allergies that she has an allergy to mercury, and mercury is actually called many different things, especially when they put it into our cosmetics. And there's a third-party testing list that she's gotten from her dermatologist that has all kinds of cosmetics that are free and clear of any mercury in any of the derivatives, because for anybody who's watching, anything less than 1% doesn't need to be
reported, right?
in the ingredients
That's crazy.
list. So
Yeah.
we're rubbing all of these toxins all over us in topical form, and our body is attempting to process it. And for a lot of people, it doesn't go very well. So
Yeah.
if interested, I'll send you that list just because I like to share it with everyone I can.
Time to wrap it up. Thanks, Baani.
This has been wonderful, Baani. Thank you so much.
Baani, I'm totally going to pick your brain. I've got my eye on a building. I go see it on Monday. It's an interim property to live and work in. And I have a feeling it's full of all kinds of chemicals. So I'm going to pick your brain on it.
I think it would be very good to test them.
Yes.
So, and I'll hook you up how to test the chemicals in your building so that you can tell, okay, these are the chemicals and now what do I do?
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
This has been Subject to Change, a sustainability podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Great.
I look forward to coming and seeing your house. I'm just going to come
Yes, we
bust
need
in
to
with Jodi.
schedule that.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Awesome.
All right. The list of
Be
visits
well.
in the Albany area.
Yeah.
Yes.
And say hi to your family.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.